is with that type of balance, you don't know for days, you know, if it's shaking things up or what have you.
The problem is when it's twisted,
Oh, you know, he and I had the same thing.
one
Well, also you do this.
All right, good evening, everyone. I call to order the meeting of the Town Commission on August 3rd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Pursuant to Executive Order Number 20-16 issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20th, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.54(5)(b)(2) Florida statutes. Procedures for public comment will be explained by the town clerk shortly. The member of the Town Commission appearing remotely for this meeting is Commissioner Bessler. Town Clerk Armstrong, please provide the information for this virtual meeting.
The agenda, the materials for each item on the agenda, and a notice regarding the virtual meeting were made available beginning July 29th, 2020 on the town's website and is also available in the town clerk's office during business hours. The public was given the opportunity to submit public comments to the town clerk prior to the meeting. The town has developed several new methods ensuring public comment for a virtual meeting. Any person may be heard by the town commission through teleconference and upon registering with the town clerk pursuant to the published notice to speak for not more than 3 minutes on any item on the agenda. Since this is a virtual meeting as authorized by the Governor of the State of Florida, members of the public wishing to address the body may do so by the town clerk will unmute the public once the mayor calls for public comment. Persons interested in speaking may speak up to voice their public comment. Do not unmute your physical phone until you are ready to make a comment, and remute your phone once you have completed your comment. Persons who cannot access the meeting by teleconferencing using a computer with speaking capabilities or through a smart application can call Town Hall at 561-732-2635 and notify a Town Hall staff of their public comment. The Town Hall staff will notify the Town Clerk, who shall read the public comment into the record. These public comments options established for the virtual Town Commission meeting comply with Section 286.0114 and Section 120.54 Florida statutes. The public that is physically present for the Town Commission meetings may participate in public comment by coming up to the podium. Facial covering must be worn at all times. A town staff will disinfect the podium after each use between speakers. Town of Ocean Ridge has a facial covering requirement and also encourages the public to practice social distance. All chairs within Town Hall have been measured to comply with the 6 feet social distance requirement. No touch hand stations have been placed next to the podium and as well as next to the entrance doors of Town Hall. Tips for a virtual meeting. Try to use one device. Mute your phone. If you're attending by telephone or computer, those that do not mute their phones can cause disruptions in the meeting. Do not unmute yourself. The information in the chat box is a public record. Call Town Hall if you're experiencing technical difficulties.
Okay, thank you. Clerk Armstrong, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bessler?
Here.
Mayor DeHaseth?
Present.
Commissioner Herbert?
Here.
Commissioner Vishalek?
Here.
Is he going to be late?
Yeah.
Okay. Vice Mayor Cost is absent with notice.
Very short notice, unfortunately. Please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm trying to catch up with you.
Okay. Before we go on to additions, deletions, and modifications, I would just like to say to our overwhelming public audience here, I am absolutely delighted that we didn't have a storm. I feel like we dodged a bullet, but rest assured our staff and our officers were on top of it. They ended up spending Friday evening here, Saturday, and they were prepared for the worst. And you know, there's usually not a lot of comfort when a storm's barreling at you, but I think that we are as safe as we can be with our staff and our officers, and I just wanted to thank them And as part of the thank you, I'd also like to thank the Ocean Ridge Garden Club for putting up the signs to acknowledge the police today. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. All right, let's move on to additions, deletions, modifications, and approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. That was a motion by Commissioner Hurlbert and a second by Commissioner Veschlag. Seeing no presentations, Town Clerk Armstrong, will you please read the announcements?
The next regular Town Commission meeting will be held on September 8th at 6 p.m. at Town Hall to include the first public hearing of the budget for FY21. The next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting will be held on August 17th at 8 a.m. at Town Hall. The Board of Adjustment will meet on August 19th at 8:30 a.m. at Town Hall. The Septic to Sewer Citizens Advisory Committee for August has been canceled. The next meeting date is to be determined. A Town Charter Amendment referendum election will be held on August 18th, 2020, along with the primary election. Residents who wish to sign up to receive important town notifications and news through Civic Ready should sign up on the town's website or call Town Hall for assistance. Next on the agenda is public comment. The mayor will invite the public to speak on to the commission on any item that is not printed on the agenda. Public comment on a specific agenda item may be made later in the meeting when the items are taken up. There is a one-time per item 3-minute individual limit for public comment that will be timed by the town clerk. Public comment is not meant to be a question and answer period, and there will be no dialogue. Anyone wishing to speak during public comment will approach the podium and state their name and address for the record, and see the town clerk after speaking to fill out a speaker card in order for the minutes to properly be recorded. The town commission would like to remind everyone that individuals addressing the commission shall use proper language, and the language which includes profanity or cursing, or which is presented as in an aggressive or threatening manner toward the town commission staff or other members of the public is prohibited. All comments shall be directed to the presiding officer of the meeting and not to individual commissioners, staff, or members of the public. Those addressing the commission shall avoid personal attacks against anyone, and the presiding officer has the authority to remove individuals from the town commission chamber if such conduct persists after the presiding officer has provided a warning that the individual is in violation of this policy.
Okay, thank you.
I have one additional announcement. I just noticed that it wasn't printed on the agenda, but Town Hall will be closed on Labor Day, September 7th. And just to note, that is usually our regular town commission meeting night. That has been moved to Tuesday, September 8th. So I just want the public to be aware that our meeting for September is not on a Monday, it is on a Tuesday evening.
Okay, thank you very much. I now open the floor for public comment.
The public participating virtually, I have unmuted the GoToMeeting.
Hello, Ron Kern, 5510 North Ocean Boulevard. We had been notified, the Crown Colony Club, as well as, excuse me, as well as the Ocean Ridge Yacht Club, that the FDOT has approved the crosswalk from the Crown Colony facility across North Ocean Boulevard to the east side. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank State Representative Caruso, the commissioners, and in particular Vice Mayor Kaz, for the work that they put in to move that forward. Actually, it was Mayor DeHaslet who basically told us that's the route that we had to go to get the approval, and it sure worked, and we do appreciate it. On behalf of the Ocean Ridge Yacht Club and Crown Colony, we want to thank everybody, and we'll move forward. We offer our assistance in whatever it takes to get it to come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the type of public comment we love.
You know it.
Anybody on the phone that would like to make public comment? You are all unmuted. Mm-hmm.
On our end, yes.
Mine says they're all muted.
That's
They-
what the screen looks like.
Yes, because I unmuted them, but if they themselves have muted themselves, then that's why it shows as muted.
right, hearing none, I'll close public comment. Clerk Armstrong, could you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Adopt minutes of the regular Town Commission meeting of July 6, 2020. Adopt minutes of the special Town Commission meeting of July 6, 2020. Approve expenditure of up to $37,975 to Raftelis Financial Consultants, Inc. for water service area analysis. Approve expenditure of $3,955 to Jones Foster for legal services for June 2020. Approve expenditure of $8,356.70 to Roberts Reynolds Bedard and Tucio LLC for legal services for June 2020. Sign engagement letter for FY20 auditing services with Nolan Holt and Minor, PA. Approve renewal of county law enforcement mutual aid agreement. Extend Tercevia, Dolan, Godot, and ANSE legal services contract for 1 year. Extend Ingenuity Group engineering services contract for 1 year. Update Public Works and Public Works 2 job descriptions. Resolution number 2020-16, a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, approving and implementing performance measure for compliance with the National Florida Insurance Program, providing an effective days and for other purposes. Authorize Town Manager Stevens to sign FEMA grant documents for COVID-19.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Armstrong. Any commission comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approving the consent agenda.
No. I move to pass the consent agenda
I'll-
as voted.
I'll second.
Okay, that is a motion by Commissioner Vishlack, a second by Commissioner Hurlbert, with a close second with Commissioner Bessler. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's move on to regular agenda items. First reading of ordinance number 2020-04. Clerk Armstrong, would you please read the ordinance by title only?
Ordinance number 2020-04, an ordinance granting to Florida Power and Light Company its successors and assigns an electric franchise, imposing provisions and conditions relating thereto, providing for monthly payments to the Town of Ocean Ridge, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Attorney Shutt, would you please advise us on this item?
Yes, FPL had approached the town some time ago wanting to, first of all, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, it's coming perfect. Okay. FPL had approached the town and requested that the town renew the franchise agreement that will be expiring in 2023. And what FPL had provided was that by doing so, or that there were changes that allowed or provided that FPL would no longer be calculating or wanted to. It's not saying we will, it's not saying we're proposing it, it's just providing an option. And so we requested that they include that in the agreement as well.
Okay, before I open the floor to public comment, I'd like to acknowledge that we have two members here from Florida Power and Light, and I would like to invite them to step to the podium and speak if they would like to.
Good evening, everyone, Mayor. Sophia Eccleston, External Affairs Manager with Florida Power and Light. I also have our attorney here, Monica Barnes, with Florida Power and Light Company. I think just to clarify, the payments do go to the town. The town has the authority to set the limit. I think we're currently at 5.5%, if I'm not mistaken, and could go up to 6%. All the fees come back to the town. I think one of the key differences that we typically deduct on the property taxes from the franchise, and we're no longer doing that. And we wanted to make sure we bring it to the town as it's extra revenue. Know that it expires in a few years, and we'll be doing it in a few years. So we wanted to make sure we bring you that extra revenue now rather than waiting three years to do it.
Can you talk into the mic, please?
I was just saying, I wanted to make sure that we bring it to the town now rather than in 3 years, since there's extra revenue that would come to the town.
Fantastic. I had a couple of questions for you, Sophia, if you don't mind. The first is, we appreciate the extra revenue. We just had a very difficult budget meeting, so and I wish all of our vendors were coming to us offering us a kickback or some money. They're not. But by going ahead and doing something 3 years prior to the expiration, is there any other exposure or any other changes that may be coming down the pike with FP&L that we need to be aware of, that, you know, that we might say, oh gosh, why did we do that 3 years early?
No, the franchise agreement is, I mean, we've been renewing a lot of our franchise agreements with a lot of our municipalities early. Just one of my franchises that there's different external affairs managers that covers different area. Village of Gulf, I just renewed theirs 2 years early. The franchise agreement is a benefit to the municipality, not to FPL.
Okay. And Attorney Schutt had mentioned this 90-cent per resident per month increase. That is something that our individual residents will see on their bill?
That's correct. It's 90 cents per month, yes. And that's all revenue that's coming to the Ocean Ridge. It's not going to FPL.
So
That's how we receive the extra revenue.
gotcha. Okay.
So it's kind of a break even. I did the math, if we have 1,800 residents times 90 cents times 12 months, it comes out to like 19,400 or so. So it's basically moving, we're saving money, but then it's just getting added to the residents' bills, electric bills, is that correct?
That is correct, Phil.
Okay.
Any other commissioner comment before I continue?
I'm just gonna say it because I'm gonna say it. I'm always worried when somebody comes and offers me money for free.
Well, we're not offering, I mean, the franchise agreement has been in place with the town for, you know, it's part of the way you guys collect your revenue, so we're not giving you free money. So the franchise agreement is part of your budget process where, you know, you collect that from the residents. So the only thing we're doing is bringing it to you earlier rather than a few years from now and bringing you extra revenue. There's no catch.
So how this benefits FP&L is we're one of the last towns to sign on this.
Right.
So it benefits them if we sign on, because then all of their agreements are the same. They don't
Right.
have to keep track of a different agreement.
Exactly.
I have one more question for you, and you're probably the wrong person to answer that question. Why does the town, for the town facilities, pay the same rate for the commercial? I think we pay the commercial rate for its facility here. Why is there not a specific government rate for government property?
I'll let our attorney answer that.
As I said, I'm sure you're the wrong person to answer, but
I didn't touch anything.
evening. Monica Barnes, I'm legal counsel for FPL. The rates are actually set by the Public Service Commission. And then how you're billed, that's determined by the Public Service Commission. So you have residential, commercial, and industrial customers, and that's a formula that's determined by the commission. So it's not something we've done.
There's no government-specific rate?
No.
All right. Thank you.
But we would welcome your lobbying for that.
Yeah, that's a good
That's a very good idea. I think the Florida League of
so
Cities
too.
would be behind you. I think everybody would be behind you. Yeah. There you go. Well. So I have to talk about the elephant in the room. So, and again, you guys are not the ones to answer, but, and I also know that really we have a very nice relationship with FPNL. And at the end of the day, you're our only option to be a service provider. So it is worth us to have a nice working, very positive relationship. One of my pet peeves, if you've ever heard me on the dais, is the redundancy of polls, specifically on the barrier island. It is a visual blight at one point, and I also feel like eventually it's just playing Russian roulette, that since we only have one road on and one road off, if we have a very bad storm, and we do have road blockage, since we only have a one-way in and one-way out unless we're using our paddle boards, that I'm just really concerned. We've had poles throughout our town marked with the white X for years running now, and I do know that some of them are AT&T poles, but some of them are not AT&T poles, and I just, you know, I'm not looking for leverage here. I'm just looking for a platform to start an open dialogue and see what we can do to move, you know, forward in a better position.
Right, and I know, May, I spoke to you recently about that, and that was the first time that I realized there was an issue going on. We do have double poles, you know, in the county, and some of it, as you say, AT&T is responsible for taking them down. I was looking into it. Our team is looking in to find out which ones have facilities that all the facilities are moved. And since that was just last week, and then we went into full storm prep mode, I didn't have an opportunity to have it before tonight. But you know, you have my word that I will look into it and figure out what the issue is. And I mean, you know, Tracy knows how to reach me. Anyone can, you know, reach me. You know, your chief even knows how to reach me. But so if there's any issues, you know, I'm gonna try to find out what poles we have that definitely have our everything off of it, AT&T, Comcast, and FPL, so we can move the ones with AT&T. You know, we've been working with AT&T to try to have them, and Comcast to have them remove their facilities. The issue is we're moving fast because, you know, we've been doing our hardening for several years to ensure that when we have a hurricane, you know, you have shortened power outages. But the thing is, AT&T and Comcast is not moving at the same speed as we are, and we've been pushing them. We have weekly calls with them. Unfortunately, that's out of our hands. So once I find out the number, you know, I'll get in touch with Tracy, and if you guys are pushing, you know, them as well, you know, together we can get it done.
Feel free to share that email, that phone call, that
Right.
person will.
I'll give you the point of contact for those
yeah.
for those companies as well.
And am I under the correct assumption that white X doesn't mean that there's a treasure buried at the bottom? It does mean that the pole should go away, correct?
I'm not sure about that. Just don't go digging for treasure.
Okay.
She knows.
All right. Any other questions for Sophia or Tanya? Tanya, correct?
Monica.
Monica.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
out tonight.
I have a question, I'm sorry, it's not for you. I have a question for Brian on that subject. Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Is it possible for us from the commission side to ask or to demand from AT&T and or Comcast, whoever has these redundant poles out there, is there a timeline that we can set them in order to tell them they need to take them down or they need to switch their services over to the new FDR pole? Is that even a possibility, or is that by legal statute? I know that they operate under a different network, under different laws, basically.
Yeah, I can just say in dealing with AT&T and Comcast in different municipalities, my neighborhood where I live, there are tons of redundant poles where it's cut off, and it should, and I know it's just the AT&T and Comcast lines that are, that's the only thing that's on that whole pole. I'm not aware of that. I mean, certainly kind of take a look, but I'm not aware of any ability that we would have to try to force them to do something, because if I'm not mistaken, I think they're probably also governed by the PSC.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Again, I think your lobbying skill set might come in very well on something like this. All right, I now open the floor to public comment. All right, we do have a couple people telephonically, but it looks like there's no public comment. So I'd like to entertain a motion for the first reading of ordinance 2020-04.
I'll move to adopt ordinance number 2020-04 on the first reading.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, that was a motion by Commissioner Hurlbert, a second by Commissioner Vishalak. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 3. First reading of ordinance number 2020-05. Clerk Armstrong, please read the ordinance by title only.
Ordinance number 2020-05, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 64, Zoning, Article 1, District Regulations, Section 64-1, RSF and RSE, Single Family Residential Districts, amending Chapter 66, Environmental Regulations, Article 2, Flood Damage Prevention, Division 3, Flood Resistant Development, Section 66-26, Building and Structures, amending Chapter 67, Building and Building Regulations, Article 2, Coastal Construction, Section 67-17, Coastal Construction and Excavation Setback Line, and creating Section 67-18, Coastal Construction Setback Line, to provide further regulation for structures constructed east of the Coastal Construction Control Line, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. Attorney Shutt, could you please advise us on this item?
Okay, town staff was directed to make some modifications to the coastal construction line, regulations. And what I've attempted to do here is basically, I think the regulations that are before you is not really anything new. It is just codifying the way that town staff, the building department has been interpreting and applying the code, I don't know, I guess for a long number of years. The first item that we have in there is I've removed the definition for use also provide that any changes or any work that is to be done east of the 1979 coastal construction line would require a variance under our variance procedures currently in our code, except for if there is already a structure existing, then the property owner would be allowed to build back to the footprint of that structure without having to obtain a variance. I think those are the major highlights. Well, we also clarify and provide, we've had some discussion on unity of titles, requiring unity of title between a property that is split by a public right-of-way, and we are clarifying in the code that before any construction can take place on a property that is split by a public right-of-way, there must be a unity of title attached to the property that is on the beach side with the property that is on the west side of the right-of-way. I don't know if you all have any questions for me or not.
Before we move to commissioner questions, I'd like to go ahead and just open it up quickly to public comment.
The public participating virtually has been unmuted. If you'd like to place a public comment, please unmute your physical phone.
Seeing none, public comment is closed. Commissioner Bessler, go ahead, please.
Yes, Brian, are you going to put another code in for the Dune area, or is it including all of that now?
We actually have a completely separate ordinance that deals primarily with dune crossovers.
Okay.
But I do like the.
Or you gonna let it go? It's like it is now.
Well, no, I mean, right now, we don't really have any regulations on dune crossovers, and so the proposed ordinance that is coming back to P&Z, hopefully at their next meeting, they will go ahead and make a recommendation on that, and hopefully we can go ahead and bring that one to you at your next meeting. But there's some new sections as it relates specifically to, it deals with sheds, but it also deals with dune crossovers, because we really don't address those, and we just lump them in with accessory structures, and we're kind of breaking those out from that.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, this current ordinance that we have here on first reading, this deals in a certain way though with the crossovers too. So if somebody comes today and wants to put in a crossover on a dune property, by this ordinance, my understanding is that they will have to do unity of title. Is that correct?
They will have to, where the property is split by public right-of-way, and where the property that they want to put the dune crossover on is currently not a buildable, it doesn't meet their requirements for a buildable lot and everything, then yes, they would have to get a unity of title between they would have to get a unity of title between this property and their main property on the other side. Now, the other ordinance that will be coming forward kind of further clarifies that.
Okay.
And that's hopefully we will be, once again, hopefully we'll be bringing that forward where if this passes, and if you're looking for that, if you're looking for further clarification, when this passes, if it goes to second reading, then hopefully you'll see that other ordinance on first reading.
Thank you.
So this was originally brought up within seconds of me walking through the door being commissioner. There is a lot of concern as we move forward on a sustainability side, and we have seen recently what Mother Nature can do in terms of dunes and erosion and other things like that. So it just was a good opportunity for us to bring in line with what we are already executing, but, you know, also making a statement about, you know, how you must not only protect yourself, but you must protect the community in terms of where you build and how you build. So, any other comments? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion on first reading of ordinance 2020-05.
I move to adopt ordinance number 2020-05 on the first reading.
I'll second.
That is a motion by Commissioner Vishalak, a second by Commissioner Hurlbert. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Okay, agenda item number 4. Second reading of ordinance number 2020-01. Clerk Armstrong, please read ordinance 2020-01 by title only.
An ordinance number 2020-01, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its code of ordinances by amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, Officers and Employees, Division 3, Town Clerk, and creating Division 5, Town Treasurer, to provide that the Town Clerk and the Town Treasurer are two distinct positions and not the same position, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. Town Manager Stevens, please advise us on this item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The town code currently provides that the town clerk shall serve as the town treasurer. In many cases, the town clerk is not properly trained to serve as a town treasurer. The proposed ordinance provides flexibility to the town to be able to either hire a town clerk that has been properly trained as an accountant and can also serve as town treasurer, or to hire a town clerk for specific duties as town clerk and appoint another employee as town treasurer. That is the case that we have currently in the office. But I wanted to make clear that this ordinance doesn't make it necessary for us to hire a person. We already have the staff now.
So we're just
This doesn't-
codifying what we have.
Correct. This doesn't create a position.
Okay, I'll now open the floor to public comment.
The public participating virtually have been unmuted. If you'd like to place a public comment, please unmute your physical phone.
Okay, hearing none, public comment is closed. I'll entertain a motion on second reading of ordinance number 2020-01.
So moved.
So seconded.
Okay, that is a motion by Commissioner Hurlbert, a second by Commissioner Vishalak. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item number 5. Second reading of ordinance number 2020-03. Clerk Armstrong, please read ordinance by title only.
Ordinance number 2020-03, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its code of ordinances by amending Chapter 66, Environmental Regulation, Article 4, Landscaping, Division 3, Tree Permits, Section 66-152, Duty to trim coconut trees, to require the trimming of coconut trees in the public right-of-way by an adjacent property owner, providing for codification, repeal conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Okay, Town Manager Stevens, please advise us on this item.
So the ordinance that is being presented to you clarifies that property owners are required to trim coconut trees in the adjacent public right-of-way that is contiguous to their property, which was the original intent of the ordinance that we currently have on town code. The Town Commission approved this on first reading at the last meeting. This is presented to you on second reading. Staff has done a lot of research and talking together in the office, and we don't know if we really want to move forward with this. You have a couple options here. We could adopt this on second reading so we have something on the books, and then have staff do further research and bring something back to you that is better for the town. We've had a lot of code enforcement cases on this, and I'm talking about to the tune of about 160 code enforcement cases on this. And if we don't put a stay on these code enforcement cases, it really is going to open it up where the town is going to have to expend a lot of money to bring these code cases to the magistrate, because we have to pay our attorney and the magistrate to hold these hearings. So, you know, we've talked, we have some differing opinions, so I'll open it up to the town commission and public comment so we can get those comments on the floor, and then staff is available to answer any questions you have.
Okay, let's start with public comment, please.
The public participating virtually have been unmuted. If you'd like to place a public comment, please unmute your physical phone.
Okay, seeing no public comment, public comment is closed. I guess before we get into the meat of it, are we not putting the cart a little bit before the horse? Our next agenda item talks about code enforcement and other areas and how we're going to start to handle code enforcement and opening it up. And I would think that we would be better served by having that discussion maybe prior to making a decision on something that is so heavily code enforcement weighed.
If you would like to, you could table this item until you take up your next item, and then we can bring it back up if that's what you wish.
Would that be the pleasure of the commission?
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Okay, so we just need a motion to table, a second, and a vote.
Motion to table, item number 5, the coconut trimming, until we go to item number 6, code enforcement.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's move to item number 6, code enforcement direction. Town Manager Stevens, can you please advise us on this item?
Absolutely, thank you, Mayor. As you know, we hired a new building official who is also going to serve as the town's code enforcement officer alongside our police officers. And as we work to on the manner in which we address code enforcement, one of our biggest challenges has been individual opposing views of commissioners and residents alike regarding code enforcement. Some have expressed the desire to approach code enforcement softly, while others have expressed a desire to go more aggressive on code enforcement, and some others are just indifferent either way. As we're in the process of reviewing our code compliance and enforcement methods, we're seeking consensus at this time from the commission so we have a clear understanding on our direction moving forward. And if you would allow Mr. Guy to speak to you, he has a very good tiered approach to code enforcement that I'd like him to talk to you about.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Randy Guy, newly hired building official for the public, especially because you know me yet. So, in looking at this on the couple weeks that I've been on board, this has actually been, an issue that's taken up a fraction of my time. So, looking at it, what I realized is that we have a special magistrate system where we actually kind of deal with almost everything in the same fashion. So what I'm recommending is that we look at a tiered approach where we could actually start at different levels, and we are seeking guidance from the council as to how we're going to go about doing this. And just as a suggestion, we could start from, looking at different code enforcement issues, starting from offering courtesy notices, like public education, going up the scale, we could do fines, courtesy notices, handling, and there's another issue that Chief wants to chime in on that one. Then, the special magistrate process where we actually take someone in front of a special magistrate and apply daily fines if necessary. And then ultimately, I guess the worst punishment that we could have for of that demolition and applies it to the lot for the new owner to actually, you know, to be able to recover that. And same thing with the scale of the enforcement issue. It could start from an overgrown lawn, a stained driveway, a stained roof, you know, work without permit, all the way up to a building that's under imminent collapse. So as you see, there are different, you know, tiers. We can look at different levels of gasoline if we wanted to think of it like that. You know, each being more severe or more powerful than the other. And just to, again, ask for guidance from the folks because we want to be clear. We want to, you know, address all our citizens in the same manner and not have people feel like, you know, we're giving someone a break for one issue and then, you know, not doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you. I think before we open it up to commissioner comment, have we already done public comment?
No, we
No.
have not. No.
How about public comment?
The public,
He's thinking. There you go.
All right.
the public participating virtually has been unmuted. If you'd like to place a public comment, please unmute your physical phone.
Ron Kern, 5510 North Ocean Boulevard. Education, for me, seems to be the smart approach to this. Most people do not know, okay, what is in code, what's not in code. They just go do it most of the time. I mean, I'm sure we've done things like that as well. So somehow there ought to be a tiered groups of code enforcement violations that if you do this, you'll know where you sit, and then without getting slammed somehow, be able to approach the town and say, this is what you need to do, and then have a timetable in order to be able to meet that enforcement. But people have to know first before they can actually act on it. It'd be really bad, especially politically bad, okay, to just come in and slap somebody with a fine or without them even knowing that that was a violation in the first place. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, and I think you speak on behalf of a lot of residents. Pardon me?
We already do that. We give a courtesy notice, we give them a client state, and we give them all the forms and we educate them.
You guys are going in and out.
So what Assistant Gatewood said is that we do have a policy and a procedure in place that starts with a letter informing them of the violation and then giving them a rectification or a period to bring into compliance and then moving forward. I think maybe what Mr. Kern is talking about is let's get even one step ahead of that. And one of the things that I had discussed in my meeting with staff was, come up with the top 10 things that you didn't know you shouldn't be doing in the town of Ocean Ridge, trying to make it a little lighthearted, not diminutive, but even residents who live right next to me, they're like, why didn't you tell me you're the mayor? And I'm like, well, I didn't know you're going to stick the sign in your yard. Like, really, come on. So, but I think it does. There are certain things that start with education that we could definitely. I love the tiered approach because some things don't need education. Some people are blatant in their violations and they know exactly what they're doing and they just keep pushing it as far as they can, hoping that a $25 fine or something else is going to be, swept to the side. So I'd like to learn more about a tiered approach, and I would like to almost see what we consider code violations almost broken out to level A, level B, and maybe level C, because they each should be dealt with in a very different form and fashion. And that level A in particular is one where we really need to make sure that we have it as part of our newsletter. Maybe it's a separate letter that goes into our water bill in December. And maybe it is something that's treated with a little bit more deference when we actually do approach a resident on it. If you've got grass up to your shoulder, you kind of know you're probably in trouble. But there are other times to do stuff. So,
Mayor, we do have a public comment from Zoanne. Zoanne, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
with this, discussion, because I absolutely support a peer, a peer approach, and we pride ourselves on community policing, and yet I've seen some very extreme, harsh enforcement, and I've seen some extreme to lax enforcement. I mean, anybody that has been driving down my street for the past 2 or 3 months, it has looked like World War III. And it's just, there has been no enforcement at all. Yet I also hear stories of other houses that are very nicely maintained, and yet they get a fine for having a dirty roof. I mean, there's gotta be something in the middle. So I think we need to be consistent and fair within our wonderful community. I think the idea of some form of an education with mayor's top 10 kind of ideas is a fabulous idea. I think there needs to be some knocking on doors and having discussions with people that, residents that might be in what we consider violation, a courtesy notice, and then, with escalating levels of fines and special magistrates. Along the lines of the mayor that has this comment, I think there's bigger issues with people that are doing building or renovations that know darn well what they're doing, and they try to get away with things. And those are the kinds of things I think Guy has his work cut out for him. He needs to document the kinds of things that we see, that you see in the town, with feedback from maybe the police officers, the commissioners, the town staff, and even some residents, of the kind of code enforcement things that we would like to see enforced in this town. And the varying levels, and maybe like the mayor said, level A, B, and C, or something that's sort of simple that everybody can understand. And I think we can have a wonderful matrix of different kinds of issues and different kinds of solutions for those issues. I think this is a great thing, and welcome, Guy, we really need you.
Joanne, can you just state your full name and your address for the record?
I'm sorry, yes, Joanne Hennigan, 91 Island Drive South.
Okay, thank you very much for your input. And you did bring up a very important aspect to this. There is residential code enforcement, and then there is construction site code enforcement. And as we start to build bigger and bigger houses that take longer and longer to build, I think people's tolerance of living next to something like that, particularly if they are not following some of our rules, whether it be cutting the grass or keeping the gate closed or covering the dumpster, their patience kind of runs thin after about, 30, 60, 90 days. And some of these are 24-month builds and or longer, and there's a lot of flooding that's taking place because water retention is not already set up as part of their initial construction piece. So maybe there is a differentiation in your tiers or in your in your plans between a residential already existing property and construction site management. Just a thought.
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. We're looking at it in that way. And for all the citizen or youth associations that we might be having, any group, I welcome an invitation where I could, one, have a listening session to find out what issues are most pertinent to you, and also, to have a discussion with my brain about, some questions you might have about some type of construction you are thinking of having, and, at that session, I'll be available to tell, that, right?
All right, any other commissioner comment?
Okay.
Microphone.
My lovely microphone. Okay. I think this is absolutely something that we all need to discuss, and it's perfect timing with Guy here because it's a fresh set of eyes coming from someplace else, looking at it with an objective look, and that's a good thing. I really think the levels are smart, separating the minor issues from the which would be residential construction, separating those. I think we do, in our own way, have a very nice tiered approach. We do try in this town to really work from the casual end, but as we all have to acknowledge, that doesn't work continually to the end. So I think refocusing our brain power on tiers, separate levels, as well as time periods, but having an end result where it's not a continual please, 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 but a lot of opportunity to give people a chance to get it right. And our enforcement is, you know, we're tired. We have the chief over here doing one job and the other job. So I think that too needs a little bit of work between all the departments to figure out how's the best way to start and get to the end point of this enforcement, because I think it's much needed, and everybody has to, whoever said that, Zoanne, we all need to be on the same level. Everybody has the same issues going on here. Now, just a public relations thing, because a lot of it does come down to people don't know the details, or if they know, they're not looking. So maybe, can you hear me? See, mine is bent over here. So I'm just going to throw it out there when we actually start to socialize and see people again. The Coffee with the Cop, where we have those mornings where people come, they have a cup of coffee, the police discuss issues that people might not be up on. It's a public relations, but it's an informative education thing. Maybe we could do a couple of those. Sorry, Guy, but a couple of those with you running the show, and let people know what our basics are from the level A, level B, level C, construction versus, you know, the dirty roof and what have you. So I think it's a grand idea, and it's going to need a lot of effort. You see this, you're already driving through all the time. Y'all see this because you're dealing with it. The chief has to be in on this because his guys are dealing with it. But I think it's something we need to take a hold of and really start working on.
This is a great opportunity for bagels with the building official.
There you go. Oh, she's
There
got a
you go.
name already.
Dinner,
Good. Okay. Same thing, but I think we could do that includes education, but we need an end game. So it's not a continual over and over, because I go to those magistrate hearings too, and even with these horrendous issues, another 90 days, another 90 days. And there's sometimes no end in sight.
Well, what I really resonated with what you said was, it's one thing to have a really good program, but if you're not executing it, it doesn't make any difference.
Absolutely.
So, and the execution is something that is going to have to be carefully crafted between the two departments to make sure that there's no crossover, one doesn't know what the other one's doing,
Right.
that there's no stepping on toes, you know, and sometimes you might want to be the good guy, no pun intended, not the bad guy.
Oh,
So,
good.
but-
Your turn.
So, I'm totally in favor of that too. Tiered approach is something that makes perfect sense. And just so this is clear to the public, and I hope that there's more people than we have right now on the actual virtual meeting that will listen to this later on. This is really not about code enforcement as much as it is for code compliance in the most cases. We have a lot of things that are being addressed and that they're slipping through cracks. And in my staff meeting, I made the point of pointing out something that happened to one of my neighbors across the street. She got noticed that her roof was dirty, and you know, it came as a notice that upset her a little bit, because otherwise her property's in really nice condition. So the part is not about the code enforcement, it is much more about trying to get people to comply with our codes, and that has to do then with what Ron said, it's education. Do they know that they're in violation? And honestly, my office window actually looks over to her house, and I didn't realize that the roof was dirty. It's not something that I actually recognized because it was just there. And yeah, after it was cleaned, it was very clear that it was dirty, but it wasn't dirty to me, you know, for the 2 years that I've been looking at it from my window. So the tiered approach is really, especially for those things like a dirty driveway, you know, knocking on the door, maybe neighbors just telling their neighbors, hey, you know, if you need a good pressure cleaning company, I got a good guy. We're in a neighborhood, really not so much as a town, more like a neighborhood. And that's, you know, I see anybody that lives in this town as my neighbor, and as such would want to hope that my neighbor cares as much about this neighborhood as I do. And yeah, those cases that don't, well, you know, we get tougher on it, but everybody else, I think, in general, this town is a very nice and friendly town. We have more of a neighborhood approach to it. We'll get further with it. And I appreciate that you're bringing this clear approach to it, and I hope that that we can move that forward and find a way how to implement.
I like the shift in words from enforcement to compliance, because that's really what it is. It is talking about withholding and upholding certain community standards that we all hopefully accept and expect, not only from ourselves but from other people. The only other wrinkle that you're going to have in this guy is that we have a good amount of seasonality. So how to best contact those people while they're out of town for the 6 months. Maybe they're not in a position that they can actually take care of something from remotely, or maybe their property manager is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. That happened across the street from me. I said, you know, you got to notice about your roof. Your roof looks, you know, could I offer you a pressure washer name? And they're like, what? You know, my property manager does it. And I says, well, maybe, maybe not. So, I mean, that's just an interesting little wrinkle that in terms of enforcement and compliance, or I'm sorry, yes, compliance, that you're just going to have to deal with. But unfortunately, most people are not as comfortable, I don't think, telling their neighbor that they need to change things. I would like to think so, but that's usually not what happens. So I guess one of the questions that I've had that I'm always a little unclear about is all compliance done because an officer or somebody drives by? Is it neighbors talking to each other? I mean, because I think the message sometimes is not as harsh depending on the messenger.
That's why they gotta work together and
Yeah.
figure out the best way so it's not all on Chief's shoulders.
You look so somber.
Since I started here in 2005, we have strived for code compliance. It is very unfortunate that oftentimes people don't like to be told what to do, and that's how it's taken. Oftentimes, code enforcement, for lack of a better term, because we're enforcing the code. We're trying to get compliance, but we're actually enforcing the code on people, is driven by complaint. And by that I mean it may be a neighbor, it may be a town resident who chooses to drive through and pick out specific violations and then call the chief on his cell phone on Saturday or Sunday morning early. Not that that's ever happened several times. It may be a commissioner making a comment to a staff member, whomever that is, be it the dispatcher all the way up to the town manager, that drives us to realize that we need to be more cognizant of those things. Much like Commissioner Vishlik said, driving around, sometimes we don't recognize or see some of the things that others do because it's normal for us. I equate this to a tactic that police officers are taught in the police academy when they patrol commercial districts. I was taught this in the town of Palm Beach with Worth Avenue. Everybody knows what that looks like? Okay? If you drive down Worth Avenue every night at 2 o'clock in the morning and you look at those storefronts, they all look fine, and you keep driving. And the next morning your boss says, yes, but Chanel's window's not there anymore. Yes, but everything looked fine, I understand. So they instilled in us to use tricks to make sure that just driving by in our mind saying that's normal, that's normal, that's normal, doesn't exist by using lighting and by using different patrol techniques. The same thing applies to code enforcement. We drive by the same place multiple times a day, and as things degrade, and I'll use that term, Mr. Vishalik sits across the street from his neighbor's house and looks at the roof every day, hours on end. The next day, it's the same roof. The next day, it's the same roof. The subtle changes he doesn't get, his neighbor doesn't. The police come along and say, your roof is dirty, you have to comply, here's your notice. In a uniform, that in itself can be scary. I think that we are striving for compliance. We do have a lot of new people. We have used the suggestion that the mayor's made on multiple occasions in the newsletter to point out codes. The placement of trash. I even went as far as to draw a diagram. It doesn't seem to take for some folks. We try and educate on Nextdoor, Civic Ready, all of those things about hurricane season priorities, trees and wires, now coconuts, making sure that you're securing your construction site. So we are going through that compliance issue. There are a lot of new people in town, I agree with you. Sometimes our quest for compliance is seen as enforcement automatically because of who we are when we come there. Sometimes it's very well received. Code enforcement in Ocean Ridge is driven mainly by complaint, be it official, formal, or, hey, you need to go by and drive by and look at this, and the expectation that we're going to take care of it. I applaud Durani's suggestion that we have a tiered code enforcement policy and direction for all of the staff, and that we work toward that with your blessing so that you can help us with education. Okay? Yes, if your yard is between 8 and 12 inches, you have to get it cut. They sent you a letter in the mail telling you to do that because that's our policy. You didn't do it. I can't help you. Yes, your roof, it needs to be cleaned. What is a reasonable period of time? And how do you want that notice? Because we started sending out letters. We planned this a year ago in our budget for the police department for code compliance to send out letters rather than having some in-person visits, because the in-person visits were the complaints that we were getting on how we were doing compliance and enforcement. Now we're getting the same pushback that the letter is too harsh. So that's kind of why I think the commission needs to hear this. I think the residents need to understand it. And we have a lot of codes in this town that deal with a lot of aesthetics and a lot of character issues to keep the town the same way it is. And I think we need to figure out what's important, anything that's a life safety issue should be automatically priority. And I think Mr. Guy agrees with me. There's zero tolerance for life safety. If it's gotten to that point, it's going to endanger someone's life. We need to handle it today. It's not a 30-day notice. Our code already says that we have to give reasonable notice for corrections. I would ask you, what is reasonable notice? So that we don't have to go back to the same place, or I don't have to listen to, I thought you said that you had noticed this. We have, and it went to the magistrate, and it was given another 90 days. Multiple times I know commissioners have asked me about properties, and I've said, it's in code enforcement and fines are running. That is aggravating and annoying to everybody. The person that wrote it, the magistrate, and the person that's complaining about it, because technically nothing's being done. It's just allowed to continue. So perhaps we need to look at that as a staff and say, where do we go? What is our abatement threshold? What is our compliance deadlines? But I think that because it's complaint driven and because it is in our code, sometimes those that you ask to enforce it for compliance or enforcement feel like they have to do something immediately, and maybe That's not what we want on certain things.
Okay, well, thank you, Chief. This is an excellent first step. I think this is a journey and a process. We're not going to get there today by any means, but I applaud staff for bringing it forward. The one thing that I have to say, and hopefully all my fellow commissioners are listening, is when we set some lines in the sand, that doesn't mean that those lines are going to be erased just because they're your neighbor or they're your friend. And that happens quite often over the years from the dais, and that type of stuff has just got to stop. Fair is fair, game is game. Yes.
I have Commissioner Bessler that's been wanting to say something for quite some time.
Oh, poor guy. I am sorry. Go, Phil.
I pretty much agree with everything you guys said, the tiered approach and all that, but I'd like to really, I think we need to expand more on what Martin said about educating the residents. And I was wondering if, like, we take the issues that are mostly violated, that people aren't getting the permits for, they're not getting the town approval to do, and kind of take the ordinances that apply to that and kind of put it in an outline and just send it out or put it on our website so that somebody doesn't have to hunt for an ordinance on trees or sheds or whatever, but can just go to the outline and say, okay, does it look good? Do I need to go and talk to the town about it? You just have like bullet points, like for the sheds, like setbacks, property coverage, height, width, whatever, and just have it as an outline. And then the number of the ordinance that you should go to look at. I think it would just be easier, more like a little encyclopedia, not large encyclopedia, but just an outline that people can look at right away to see what they need to do.
We had started the discussion with the top 10, top 15 things that that you're doing in town that you really shouldn't be doing. So I think that that's a great first kick at the can, is to take a look at what are the average everyday violations, both from a residential and a commercial side, and then come up with some very clear messaging, and whether that is done through, I think it has to be done through multiple media outlets, whether it's in person, whether it's on the website, whether it's a letter that goes out, whether it's a brochure that sits in town hall. But just know that it's a process, and we're going to have to be a little bit patient about that. I see you standing there, Chief. I think we beat this horse.
As part of our education process, the town already has a new resident package online and available through dispatch. And whenever we have people change alarms and do those triggers that we know they're new residents, we try and get that out. Perhaps we could revise that and give that to the commission for some suggestions so that we're not looking at it from a myopic point of view, and that may be a start.
And I also would like to point out that we do have a list on the website of what needs a permit, anywhere from generator, where you're putting in a slab, whether you're doing a shed, we do have a list. I mean, we can try to other routes of different places to put it, but we do have a list in place.
Okay, well. All right. Having had this discussion, what type of direction do you need to go forward?
Just give us consensus direction to move forward with the tiered approach, have staff work on that and bring it back to the commission.
Not only would I like to see a tiered approach in terms of the program, but a tiered approach in terms of the execution and who is doing the execution, what is the follow-up, and what is the teeth at the end of the day.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, good Lord.
So you broke up. Did you say, we're going to educate the residents, or I missed that part?
Yes, that will be part of that will be part of the overall program for sure. That will be the foundation probably for the residential as we started.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So I think you have your consensus. Based on that, I really think that, I know that we have tabled item 5 to after this discussion. I would almost like to see that we postpone the reading of it on the adoption to either date certain or take it back to staff and see where it falls in within this tiered approach and how it is best handled. you had said one of the options might be just adoption tonight and then go back and modify it and tighten it up to where we really felt the intent of it is. And it just might be, if we could work on that path simultaneously, but I'm not sure we're ready to pass an ordinance that we're not 100% happy with, nor do we know where it falls in with the remaining part of the overall program.
What, can I just make a suggestion? If you do postpone this, I would ask that we put a stay on all code enforcement cases that are currently out there for coconut trimming. So we don't have to bring 160 cases to the magistrate.
And that was never the intent of this
Right.
ordinance at all.
Exactly. Oh, sorry, Phil. I said, if it's the commission's pleasure to postpone this, I would ask the commission place a stay on all current code enforcement cases related to coconut trimming so that we don't bring 160 cases to the magistrate.
And just to point out, if we don't put it to a date certain, we're going to have to re-advertise for a second reading of this.
That's why I added those couple words.
Also, I wanted to bring up the fact that we're starting a discussion about the ordinance itself and the necessity of the pre-hurricane trim and all that, and as we're getting more and more information, I think we need to look at the whole thing, not just holding it off and bringing it back based on enforcement. I think we need to re-look at the entire option that it originally was. That's just my input. And I'd like to see some more information about how big a problem this is regarding storms versus just trimming them for their health. I think that's all part and parcel of holding off on this.
Okay.
Well-
So I know Brian is probably going to chime in and tell you that if we make too many changes to the ordinance, we'll have to bring it back for a first reading and then re-advertise for a second, just so you know.
And what I'd like to add is, part of the intent was to protect yourself and your neighbor from storm damage. The other part of it was, we have a lot of coconut trees that are either in multifamily parking lots and or right-of-ways that are dropping coconuts. And when we went to the landlord and said, hey, all your residents have got broken windshields and crushed in things, and he said, not my problem. Not my problem. You don't have an ordinance about it. Sorry. So it's not just
Right,
storm.
we gotta figure this
Yeah.
out. Right,
Yeah, it's not just storm.
I understand. I think we need to relook at the entire ordinance.
So then should we not put a pause on the ordinance as it is in general? Or we just putting a pause on the amendment to the ordinance? Because now it becomes, I'm sure these 160 cases, Chief, are those are not 160 cases in the right of way, which pertains
No.
to item
No.
number 5.
So part of the enlightenment this ordinance caused, and when I had to read it as we began enforcing it, and the questions that were received and the information that was pointed out by specific people that we were going to request voluntary compliance from, truly the way the ordinance is worded, it does not meet the intent of the commission. That's the problem. Yes, as of July 1st, every coconut tree in town should be free of dead, dying fronds and coconuts or seeds. However, what we've determined is that on July 1st, that compliance occurs on a tree. And I've pointed a couple out to the town manager in the town's property that we actually took care of, where those trees now have dead, dying fronds and coconuts. But on the way the ordinance was written, on the date that they had to be trimmed, they were in compliance. And so I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the intent was protection, life and property safety. It wasn't just tied to July 1st. It was designed more predominantly to be through hurricane season, but also to stop having coconuts overhanging public rights of way that may injure or and fall on somebody or someone's car, which unfortunately, I don't believe that the ordinance addresses. And if that's the intent, which I understood it was, I think that we need to relook at it as a whole. And the right-of-way issue brought a lot of that to the attention.
And because hurricane season is so long, you can cut your coconuts and then they're gonna regrow during hurricane season, so.
I agree, but I've never seen a coconut grow to full maturity within the amount. Put your hand down. You too.
So what we've seen is on July 1st, the tree appears to be void of coconuts. And within 3 weeks from the heart of the tree, you start to see the development of the coconut. If we're seeing that on July 30th, on September 30th, we're going to have larger coconuts. That's my concern, is
Yeah.
it?
I think we've brought up enough issues to say that this is probably not ready for prime time for adoption. So how do we best go about keeping the ordinance that we have in place, but doing a stay of execution, but revisiting it to what the intent of it is and tying it in with what Guy is going to come up with in terms of compliance?
Well, the original intent of this amendment to our current ordinance was that so the town was not going to have to spend a lot of funds to trim everything that's in the right of way.
I don't read the
So-
first ordinance that saying that, though.
Original ordinance.
Correct.
Well, it says all property
Property
owners are
owners
required to
required.
trim coconut trees. Hold on. All coconut trees in the town shall be required to be trimmed annually by July 31st of each year. And where a lot of these trees are in the town's right-of-way, that means the town is going to take care of those. So I would say go ahead and adopt this at this
Okay.
point so that we don't have that monetary.
But
Obligation.
If we're not enforcing it, I think the consensus here is somewhat clear that we're not.
To not enforce it?
Because we're gonna have 160 cases already stacked up
Right.
for a magistrate. The
Okay.
magistrate's gonna be here for weeks on time.
Yeah, correct.
Dealing with 160 cases.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love
Right.
the lady, but I'm sure she has better things to do. So if we're not enforcing it,
Then it doesn't matter.
adding to it and adding more to it, now we have 200 cases.
Okay, so I guess just direct, a motion and a second and a vote to direct staff not to enforce this ordinance.
I would say not to enforce and to redraft.
Yeah.
There you go.
If I can just ask a quick question, I guess it sounds like the intent or what you're looking to do on this particular ordinance is to go down the change and then, and I'm trying, it's a little kind of difficult to hear on some things, but I'm trying to decipher what I'm hearing, and then I guess to give consensus to staff not to enforce the current section of the code
Yes,
for trimming of coconut trees, is that correct?
correct.
What's that?
Suspend enforcement for the current enacted ordinance that is in place regarding coconut trimming. Suspend the enforcement of that code and basically go back to the drawing board and see how we're gonna
Redraft.
redraft this. And just, if I may make that point, somebody had brought up to me that the surface of a coconut and how that would actually become projectile in what winds and
Right.
I have a friend of mine who's an engineer and a physics guy. I had him just look at it very briefly, to take measures of the coconut type of thing. It's almost negligent to the point where this is really becoming an issue. Coconuts falling out of a tree and of a danger to the public than the coconut becoming a projectile, as far as he could, calculate out.
So maybe one of the discussions on the redraft is maybe it is only, if you want coconuts around your entire house and over your own sidewalk, go, kumbaya. But if you put it out where it's gonna knock your neighbor on the head as he walks by with his dog, that might be the point of differentiation.
Right.
Need to keep it trimmed.
That's what I think. We need to relook at the storm versus the danger of a coconut falling there or there. I got the same information when I was doing a little research as well.
But heavens knows, I think we've spent too much time tonight talking about
coconuts?
coconuts. Yes, I know that it's all part of the process, but.
So how do we do this?
Motion, second vote.
Should I make a motion
Yes.
to suspend?
Do you have a public comment, Mr. Kern, as long as you were courteous enough to come?
I'm not sure I know what's going on.
Just as well.
I mean, it seems to me we had something on the books that said the coconuts had to be taken down by X date.
Correct,
I
yes.
know we've done it, we spent $3,000 for fronds and coconuts to take them out of Crown Colony. We did it because it was against the ordinance. But we're saying right now that those that didn't do it are getting a pass? Is that what we're saying?
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry, Ron. but
We're rethinking that ordinance.
Why? I mean, the reason why you had the ordinance in the first place is for safety and for projectiles damaging property. Why would you not?
I would say this is how I would prefer it, not giving them a pass, but not taking them to magistrate. To take somebody to magistrate for a $25 fine because they're not gonna come into compliance is fiscally irresponsible, especially given our piece. So maybe, I don't want them everything stricken from the book. I mean, I'd still like to see that if people would like to comply, and we'd like for them to comply, that they would keep going forward. I just don't see that taking it forward to magistrate level at this point is necessarily what the intent of what we were doing.
Ron, the coconuts that you guys were trimming over on your property, are those, when you look at those objectively, are those in areas where they could actually hurt somebody? Or you walk by and they could fall down?
They're all over the place and they could either fly to hit somebody, but most of it would be property damages, through windows and they're close to
That's under the assumption that they actually go flying or hurt.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a hurricane. We get pretty strong winds around here, and when the winds at 20 to 30 to 40 mile an hour, it can take those coconuts off the trees.
Dropping versus flying.
Dropping versus projectile.
Yeah, dropping versus
You
flying.
got a coconut palm that's probably, it's higher than, so it's maybe 30 some feet.
But we still need to trim so they don't drop on someone.
We have to take it down because it is swinging. I mean, it really moves.
That's what they're
Yeah,
supposed
there's
to
a
do.
lot of differing opinions as to whether they just drop to the ground or if they become projectiles. So that's what staff
That's
has
what
to
we're talking.
look into, do more research on.
Yes.
So one of the issues is that the current ordinance has a specific trim by this date. And therefore, I respect Mr. Kern's comments that during a thunderstorm with a 50-mile-an-hour wind burst in October or November or January or February, if there's coconuts on there, they're just as dangerous then as they are in hurricane season. But the ordinance does not address that.
Okay, I believe we've established that. So the question in front of the commission and looking for staff input is, do we adopt this so we are, as a town, in compliance with our original ordinance and therefore not fiscally obligated to do any further coconut trimming within town right-of-ways at all? And then look at another ordinance and, fully vet what it was. Then the other componentry of that, pointed out by Mr. Kern, is what do we do with the outstanding enforcement issues? I mean, so they were given a letter, said, get your coconuts out. They haven't gotten their coconuts out. What has been our follow-up?
to date, if they have called and given us a reasonable time frame, they have been given extension on compliance.
Okay.
Some have not, and the discussion has been had with the town manager, and that's why we're here today.
Okay, so for the folks who have not called in, of the 160, are we talking 100 called in and said, hey, I didn't mean to, I'm getting it together? I mean, let's talk odds.
I don't have the exact number, but it is probably over 50 that have not acknowledged anything.
Okay, so really it wouldn't be 160 going to magistrates, and let's just kind of reel this back into a sensible level. We're talking about 50 people who seemingly don't want to respond to be compliant right now. They may be seasonal, they may be out of town, they may say, keep your hands off my nuts. I don't know what the deal is. So that's where we're really bringing it down to, right? So what do we do that I don't like having an ordinance and not
Following it through.
I think it sets a very bad precedent.
So let me ask this, because this has gotten so convoluted here.
Susan?
So our concept, sorry, I gotta look at Tracy because that's where I'm asking my questions. I can't look at Brian. Okay, so I think we're all on the same boat with this, but do we want to, which makes more sense or less sense, is to vote this in and then maybe bring back a repeal when we find a better solution that suits the desire of the original ordinance? I'm just looking for our way to go forward, out of this and go forward. Does that make, Brian, does that make any sense to vote this in and then come back with a new one, repeal the old one, put first, second reading for the new one? Is that how this would work?
So, yes, I would suggest voting this in so that we have some sort of protections.
Something.
And then put a stay on code enforcement cases that we have outstanding so that staff has time to work on our tiered approach of code enforcement and put this in one of the tiers and determine what level of code enforcement this particular code will get.
And what about rethinking the ordinance as it stands down the line where we start, right?
Yeah, and direct staff to rework the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that work? Anybody think that'll work? Phil, did you hear any of that?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
I mean, maybe what you want to do as far as putting a stay on there is just basic, I mean, if you all want to adopt this and pass it, you do that with the direction to staff that this, I guess I'm assuming you're talking about the amended portion, that this ordinance here, the amended portion of it, not be enforced until further direction from the commission.
No, but none of it is none of the code is enforced until further direction.
Okay, so this whole section
Correct.
will not be enforced
Right.
until further direction from
Possible
the
new
commission.
Correct.
Are we all anywhere near understanding all that together? Right? Not because we're looking at a new direction for a new ordinance eventually.
Okay, so do you want me to put a motion together?
Could you?
Just-
Are you lost?
No,
I am.
I'm not lost, I'm trying to make sense as to why we're passing something that we're halting at the same time. That to me is,
Well, that was the original one, was do we abolish it and just wait for a new ordinance? But where is our liability in between?
My understanding is the passing of it releases the liability of the town
Right.
having to cut those coconuts. That's it. So
Right.
then we're not negating this. What we're saying is we're gonna go back to the overall now amended ordinance and improve it.
so then what we should.
But this section of it, we're not repealing. This will always remain as part of the ordinance.
So then what we should do is, I mean, this is clearly intended to, and we have let's say Coconut Lane is probably the most logical choice, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So Coconut Lane. So in Coconut Lane, you have coconuts that are clearly on the town's right of way. Coconuts that can cause a danger to the public that walks on the public right of way, on the street, or on the sidewalk. So then we should not suspend the enforcement for, I personally think we should suspend the enforcement for private properties, private property owners, which I think is most of the cases that we're talking about, that are not in compliance. However, if there is a safety issue where the coconuts are in the right of way, or where the coconuts can fall into the right of way, I think those should be enforced.
So-
Now, how do you put that
Safety
into
issues, yeah, exactly.
into a motion?
Well, Brian, whose liability is that? If we pass an ordinance that they're supposed to cut the, coconuts down on the public our public right of way, and somebody gets hurt, if we go to court and we pass this, ordinance, but then we tell, the chief not to enforce it, are we liable then, if somebody does get hurt?
The bottom line is, we are responsible for the town's public right-of-ways. So regardless of whoever's doing any work in there, planning anything, whatever, we are ultimately responsible for that. So if we have an ordinance that says you need to trim the trees in the right-of-way, if they do it negligently, or, I guess just basically saying that if they do it negligently, and we know about it and we don't correct it, potentially that could be on us.
So hence adopting this, re-looking at the ordinance in full along with enforcement, are we back to thinking that that might be the direction?
I think the direction is a stay on execution to taking anybody to the magistrate. I wouldn't like to say that we're not enforcing it. I wouldn't like to say that we're giving anybody a hall pass because they haven't been good. Okay, my suggestion is that I would like to see us pass this. I would like to see that we continue to issue enforcement or compliance notifications, whether that's in person or by a letter. The only change I would say until we have the plan set forth by staff on this tiered system is that we are not taking anybody, a stay of execution for taking anybody to the magistrate. And since it is a smaller subset, it is not 160 or 180 people, since it's a smaller subset, that, we can continue to maybe send them one other letter, but then we just kind of put it on ice until we get the newer ordinance that is
Right, that's what I'm
more
thinking.
representative.
So we're protected, we're still expecting what we've been expecting, but we're going to rework it and bring it back eventually.
Yeah, because I don't think it's fair for the people who have gone into
Right.
compliance. I mean, it really isn't.
Well, also, we need to be, not to be liable.
Correct.
Yeah, I would approach it more from the liability portion too,
Right, and that's the big one.
Sorry, Ron. It's not, that was not the intent of it, obviously. Brian, on the liability issue, if one of the residents goes up on the tree.
Oh, let's not give anybody any
Don't say that out loud.
ideas to be bad.
Where does that leave the town if they fall off the ladder? Brian?
He left.
Yeah.
He left.
I'm just trying to think of a good way to respond to that. I imagine if the tree was somehow, I don't know, if there was an issue in the right-of-way that caused the person to fall, other than the person was just clumsy or something like that, then that would, I think they would have a better case against us. Now, regardless of that, if they're doing work in the right-of-way, and they just fall because they're clumsy, or they weren't able to handle a ladder or something like that, that's, my argument is that's not any negligence on the town. That's, we didn't force them to do that. They could have hired a tree company to come out there and take care of that if they wanted to. intersection where people walk by every day and all of that, and the adjacent property owner is not dealing with it, but it's in their right of way, you know, that may be something that we would probably need to deal with on that, because if it is in their right of way, we can't say, well, the adjacent property owner was supposed to deal with that, not us. You know, ultimately, once again, we are responsible.
And that's why I don't want to suspend any enforcement on it at this point. So, in the last statement, Brian, are we ready to bring this home? Because I'm my ADD sitting, and this is like, how would you like for the motion to be crafted?
If you're asking, I think you were asking me, I mean, I would say move to approve adoption of this ordinance on second reading with the direction that staff will not enforce
Nope.
section 66-152 of the code until further direction is given by the town commission. And if that's what you're looking for. Now, that doesn't stop the town from maintaining the right of way. It stops us from, you know, taking any property owners to code enforcement for a violation of this section.
Mayor, I think you said it best. If you want to restate it and somebody can say so moved.
Okay.
Remember what you said?
Sure. I would move that we adopt ordinance number 2020-03 on second reading with the understanding that staff will bring back another, that staff will take a look at tightening the ordinance and changing it. Up until that time, enforcement will be ongoing, but there will be a stay of execution to moving enforcement any further beyond the initial steps up to and not including going to the magistrate.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes unanimously.
I'm telling you.
Okay. Yes. Agenda item, well, you know what? Sure.
When we replace these palm trees over time, can we just plant ones that don't have the coconut? I mean, don't the palm trees look similar, but some produce coconuts and some don't?
Yes, we can change our landscaping code to say no coconut trees allowed to be planted in the town of Ocean Ridge from this date forward.
So Commissioner Bessler, I'll let you bring that one forward, okay?
Including a name change on Coconut Lane.
Yes.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
Yes.
To Cabbage Palm Lane.
Okay. Agenda item 7, authorize Town Manager Stevens to enter into a 3-year contract with Point and Pay for debit credit card payment processing services. Town Manager Stevens, can you please advise us on this item?
Yes, we have been exploring the possibility of offering electronic plan review to enhance our services to the public, and that's for building plans. In order to move in that direction, we'll need to begin accepting debit and credit card payments. Once the service is in place, we'll be able to accept debit and credit card payments for any payments made to the town through our website, not just for building permits, but say for garbage and trash payments, alarm monitoring, and so forth. In light of recent events due to COVID-19, this will not only be a practical service, but also a safe one for our residents and our customers. I've explored several different companies for this service, and Point and Pay stands out above the rest. I have personal experience with this company, as the previous 2 towns I worked for used their services. Point and Pay is willing to waive the setup fee of $5,000 as long as we sign a 3-year contract, so they have time to break even on the deal. There are no charges to the town for this service, as Point and Pay charges the customer a convenience fee for using the service. The convenience fees are a $2 minimum or a 3% on a charge. So it's a $2 minimum, but say a resident had a bill of $100, then it would be $3. But also, you could opt to do an e-check through Point and Pay, and the flat fee is $2. It's not percentage based, so that would save money for that. I have spoken to the town auditor and the town attorney, and neither has any concerns about using the service, and we recommend moving forward.
Okay, I'd like to open it up to public comment, please.
The public participating virtually has been unmuted. If you have a public comment, please unmute your physical phone.
Okay, seeing no public comment, I close public comment. Any questions for Town Manager Stevens?
I actually have one. So this will be a required payment service, so, or can somebody also come in with a check and drop it with?
Absolutely. It's not required. It's a convenience for the customer.
And I just want to make a comment about this because I think it is fantastic that we're moving into this, in that direction, especially with the electronic plan review. This is going to be a huge step for us. It's going to make things a lot easier. It's going to make things a lot easier also on the staff that does not have to scan plans anymore. So once we get to that point, I think it's going to be fantastic. I'm very happy about this.
Thank you for mentioning that, and that will actually decrease our budget slightly, because if the customer is giving us the electronic plans, we don't have to pay for scanning for that, so.
Fantastic. Okay, I'll entertain a motion on authorizing the town treasurer to begin accepting credit debit card payments and to authorize the town manager Stevens to negotiate a contract with Point and Pay for debit credit card payment processing services at no cost to the town.
So moved.
All right, that is a motion by Commissioner Hurlbert, a second by Commissioner Vishalak. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes unanimously. Moving on to staff and committee reports. Patiently, our head of P&Z has sat in the back. Welcome, Mr. Marsh. You're just lucky we didn't kick coconuts back to you. That's all I can say.
Good evening, Mark Marsh, Chair of Planning and Zoning. I just had visions of a skit, a Monty Python skit. I could write and having grown up and owned 1,200 acres of coconuts, they don't fly through the air, they fall straight down. The frond is the most destructive item, and green coconuts only come down from rodents. Rats. So I think we're all in good stead. Anyway, just a brief summary of what we discussed at our meeting last Monday. We opened the meeting by paying respect and tribute to Jerry Gray's passing and recognition of his passionate service and dedication to the town. And I think we'll all miss him, obviously. And anyway, in terms of items that were reviewed, we had two new projects, one on 15 Spanish River Drive, demolition and new construction, or construction of a new house. There was some discussion as to the design solution, and after quite a bit of discussion, the commission gave some comments or recommendations, and they were approved, subject to coming back to negotiate with Durrani, and hopefully it'll work out. The second item was 18 Hudson Avenue, which was a resubmittal from what was deferred previously because it was much larger, and it was in that transition between what's a flat roof and what's a sloped roof. The scheme that was presented was removed all the flat roof aspects of it, reduced the square footage, and was unanimously approved. And I do live on that avenue. I noticed they cleared the property today, so that's moving ahead. The ordinance that came before us, the proposed coastal control construction line, I think I got here late, but I assume that passed. Well done. The two other ordinances, one was addressing sheds and dune crossovers. Sheds was greatly debated, not quite as much as the coconut here, but there's still a lot of gray areas. I don't think our commission felt comfortable with passing it or passing it along to you, and it was tabled for further discussion. And primarily it was items such as how do you address nonconformities of setbacks that some lots in town have. So I think there's a lot more work to do on that. In the dune crossover aspect of that ordinance, I think we're all aware of the crossovers that DEP allow over the dune area. I think one of the open items is the size of viewing decks on associated or part of a walkover. And that goes into, do condominiums have larger areas than private residences and that type of thing? So again, we weren't comfortable, and some additional research needs to be done there to see if we can maintain, a reasonable size walkover structures. And the third one was the modification of the regulation governing fences. And again, this was quite open-ended, a lot of discussion. What's a fence? Who's a fence? Chain link, barbed wire, I don't know. So again, we table that for discussion, and I think through staff and maybe our commission and the town commission, we'll come to a resolution or recommendation that everybody would like to approve or see approved. On the general comments, I just wanted to state, because it came up in one of the applications, the Planning and Zoning Commission is not a design board. We're not here to redesign people's applications. All we can do is suggest some revisions or alternate solutions, but we're not going to become a design arm of the town. That's never the intent for the Architecture Review Committee. And so I'm personally going to make sure that we don't get into that role, because I think it's a dangerous area to get into. So our basic statement is going to be not redesigning applicants' designs. If they can't interpret what we are recommending, then I think they need to go back and revisit. And our next meeting is the 17th, 2 weeks from tonight. And we welcome all those, and I must say I'm glad to see all the commissioners who attend and other public. The chief reminded me that was one of the longest meetings. It was almost 2.5 hours, which for me is a record to be even stationary in the meeting. Anyway, things are moving along well, and I'll answer any questions that the commission may have.
Any questions? Very good.
All right, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes.
in the meeting.
Yes.
Just for the record, it was 28 Hudson, not 18 that they reviewed.
28?
28. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Mr.
Thank you.
Marsh. Patience of Job. All right, town manager report, number 9.
Palm Beach County recently extended the mask mandate until August 23rd. We ask that our residents and visitors continue to do their part in wearing facial coverings, maintaining proper social distancing, and washing hands frequently to help slow the spread of the virus. I recently sent a funding request to Senator Rubio, Senator Scott, and Representative Frankel, requesting that CARES Act funding go directly to municipalities for COVID-19. The first round of CARES Act funding went directly to the county, and while we did receive some PPE from the county, we are seeking to receive direct revenue for reimbursement for other COVID-19 related expenses, such as signage, increased sanitation for our building, etc. Another request was sent directly to Governor DeSantis requesting that he extend our ability to host virtual meetings until the expiration of the state of emergency related to COVID-19. I'll update you as things progress, but he did extend our ability to hold budget meetings virtually. So that means our September town commission meetings, both of them, can be held virtually.
Which is the September
8th.
September 8th.
And the next one is hold on one second.
I lost you after September 8th.
So, yep, I fizzled off. Hold on one second. The second one, I believe, is the 21st. It's a Monday evening.
Those are the budget meetings.
Well, the regular town commission meeting on the 8th is also a budget hearing within that meeting.
So that qualifies as well.
Yes.
Correct.
In the month of July, the following employees had anniversaries with the town, and we thank them for their dedication to the town of Ocean Ridge. Our treasurer, Jean Hallahan, is celebrating 15 years with the town. Public Works 2, Billy Armstrong, is celebrating 10 years with the town. Sergeant Ermery is 5 years with the town, along with Sergeant Pylon, who has 5 years with the town. And Lieutenant Scott McClure is celebrating 4 years with the town. So thank you again for your dedication to the town. We did a photo op today. We did a photo op today for the newsletter for those employees.
With masks.
Yes, with masks on.
Of course.
Yes, absolutely. FDOT has preliminarily approved the Crown Colony crosswalk, and our town engineer is now working with FDOT personnel on the placement of that crosswalk. As soon as the placement is approved, the town engineer will submit plans and necessary application paperwork to FDOT for final approval. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Attorney Shutt, do you have a report for us today?
I do not.
Police Chief, you're next up.
You will find the June 2020 monthly report attached for both the police department and fire department. I would like to remind everyone that the census count is in progress. Today, we had census workers walking through town. They are readily and easily identifiable. They will have a laptop computer of sorts or a tablet that says U.S. Census on it. They're carrying identification that clearly identifies them as a U.S. Census poll taker. And they will have a backpack with them that has the logo of the federal U.S. Census workers on it. If they don't have those, or if any of you or the public sees someone or is approached by someone and has a question, please call us. We will be more than happy to verify their identity. They are used to it.
Chief, do they only go to your house if you have not answered the census?
Yes.
Yes, they do. And while we're talking about the census, just for a quick moment, Ocean Ridge is below the national average of response rate for the census, and also below the county average of response rate. We're still only at a 49%, and that's probably why
They're out.
we have census workers coming out so early, because they were actually not supposed to come out until September, but I think because we're so below that they're starting with us early.
And that means decreased funding for our town
Sure.
for critical items that we need to fund. So I urge the public, please fill out your census.
So I know that we have something on the website, and I know that we've done something in the newsletter. Is that something, is that a one-page flyer or something that could be shared with somebody like Mr. Kern, who could turn around, intern, and send it to everybody at Crown Colony, or?
He's already done that.
Or
Of
could we
course
do a
he
Civic
has.
Ready? Could we do a Civic Ready email or something to say that these guys are out and they're legit and what to look for, maybe? That's what I just.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Code compliance,
Now.
But that's,
If you had thought of that earlier, yes, and I could have had a wide-ranging audience. Well, 182 actually, but right now.
Who's
it's at-
counting?
Please fill out your census paperwork.
I did.
Please answer the questions if they come to your door. If you're scared or concerned, If you don't know who's knocking on your door, call the police department. We will come and make sure that you are not being scammed.
And they're not asking for your debit card.
If they ask for your debit card and your PIN, please call me and give me your debit card number and your PIN. Do not give it to the census worker. It's just a revenue enhancement program for the town.
Right.
I would like to end this by telling everyone in the commission and the town that we are very appreciative of everyone's patience and understanding during our hurricane preparation and our response exercise. As many of you know, on Friday evening at 5 p.m., we were notified by the National Hurricane Center that the town of Ocean Ridge in Palm Beach County was facing a direct hit from a Category 2 hurricane. Because of the short length of time and the fluctuation of the storm, the town activated their emergency response plan, and we did a full response to be prepared for anything that the town would face. It was a wonderful exercise. It went well. Everyone in the town staff got along. All of the residents seemed to be appreciative. We had very good contact. We did not have any reported major issues in the town. Some small power outages. Island Drive was completely out for a while. FP&L responded very quickly. Tropical Drive had some issues, and Anna Street had some issues that we're aware of. As usual, I will say that I believe that your town staff, especially your police and maintenance workers who were here for an extended period of time, living together as a family, did an exemplary job, and I have nothing further.
Thank you. I believe we have a public comment from Mrs. Hennigan.
Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes?
This is Joanne Hagan from 91 Island Drive South. I'm not sure if this was shown on the police report, but I had an episode in my home when an unwanted intruder slithered into my kitchen, the refrigerator, and I wasn't sure if in the police report it was counted as a disturbance for criminal mischief. Black snake, and I wasn't sure what to do with it, except I wasn't going to live in my house anymore. So I called our Ocean Ridge Police Department, and within a very quick period of time, Lieutenant Jones and Billy were out at my house, helping us move our refrigerator, and then Officer McAllister came out with a wonderful long instrument to catch the criminal, and within 10 minutes, they saved our lives from this slithery creature. So I'd like to extend a big thank you to Lieutenant Jones, Officer McAllister, and to Billy.
Thank you, and they did receive a copy of your email, and were personally thanked by the town manager for the apprehension.
So was it considered trespassing? Illegal parking?
Pest control.
It is going to be in the July report, and hopefully that will be the only criminal activity we have to report to.
That'd be nice.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mrs. Hennigan, and I think that speaks to the fact that the community policing is bar none with our town.
Mm-hmm.
Alive and well. All right. Okay. Moving on to town engineer and public works.
Can I mention something?
Oh, sure.
To the chief. And it's kind of based on what we talked about in the budget on the vehicles. The schedule you have for the vehicles is replacing them every 3 years. And we've been doing 4 years now for the last 2 or 3 years. Shouldn't we change that schedule so we kind of have a better understanding of when we're going to replace these? Or is there a reason we're sticking with the 3 years?
This is actually, we've been attempting to do that, but we had scheduled everything for 3 years. This is the first budget cycle where we actually made the definitive decision that we were going to do that for all. And since it hadn't finished yet, I took some of the older vehicles off, and I have to just go back and reformulate that particular Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Is there somebody here to speak on behalf of the town engineer and public works department report that we received?
There is not. If you have any questions, I'll attempt to answer them for you. This is the first report that you're receiving from the town engineer and Public Works collectively, and as you can see from their first report, that they are extremely busy with outstanding projects that they're working on. If you have any questions about any of the projects, I'll be happy to give those questions to the town engineer and Public Works, and we can get an answer for you.
I thought the report was
Yes,
fantastic.
I love the report.
So,
Really well done.
excellent.
Please pass on our,
Yes.
our thank yous for that.
Will do.
Okay, Mr. Guy, you're on.
So, in the month of June, we received 62 permit applications.
Crazy.
We issued 67, completed 42 plan reviews, gave revision. We issued one right-of-way permit. We did 165 inspections, 10 site visits, 3 stop work orders, and we had 1 court enforcement here. Now, my first weeks of being a building official have been quite pleasant, and I've received extremely warm welcomes and open arms from my local staff and the community as a whole. On the many key aspects of the community, the one I am compelled to mention at this time is the drainage, especially on the island. I must commend the actions that are currently in place to mitigate drainage issues, specifically the use of trench and driveway drain systems that are currently implemented in new construction. I wish to encourage the use of this system to substantially improve properties, as this system is beneficial to the community as a whole and not just the individual lots. I'm concerned that properties that attempt to do upgrades just shy of the 50% substantial improvement rule are denying the overall community the mutual benefit of the improved drainage mitigation for the entire community. FEMA does encourage communities to implement strategies that will mitigate unique circumstances that communities encounter. I'm proposing that the Commission consider the possibility of lowering the substantial improvement threshold, which will do a few things. It will expand the installation of the enhanced drainage requirements. It will also increase our community rating score, which will lead to a lowering of the community's flood insurance rate. And of course, it will improve the overall drainage capacity of the community. I was kind of shocked driving down some of the streets, even this afternoon, just after the rain.
Goof.
And we have a serious issue. And I think the most dangerous problems that we have are not looking up, it's looking down. One of our clients, community members, had a situation where they replaced the underground sewage lines. The contractor left a few holes in the ground. Now, they had a small rain, and they were able to see water moving under their floor. And I had to kind of just point out to the homeowner that it had always happened. Whenever we have a rain, water moves back and forth below the feet. So we have to do what we can to help our neighbors. You know, FEMA has some things in place, and again, I'm really concerned. The rules as is right now is that if you're improving your property, the value of your residence, up to 50%, then you're allowed to do just that without having to do anything else to the site. And I've seen a few examples where it has been vastly abused. And the people who do this, they start started out thinking they could do 49. And in each case, they ignored the bigger rule, which is substantial improvement of a property is not a one-time event. It's actually accumulated over a 5-year period. So what they'll do, they say, we're going to do a kitchen remodel, and they add a bedroom, they add a bathroom, and they do a driveway, then they do the roof. So all of a sudden, they're way over 100% of what they've done, and they're robbing the community again of, you know, the enhanced draining and the different things that a bona fide new construction have to do by just moving and leaving a few walls of it. So I implore the council to look into that. You know, think about it. It's a discussion to be had, whether we're going to move it to 45, 40, you know, lower it somewhat, so that when the discussion starts, we say to someone, listen, this is a serious issue for community, for our community to survive. We need to be vigilant about the issues of drainage for everyone. All right, so I thank the commission for the work that you continue to do. I'm going to meet Mr. Martin that too, with the PMG board. That actually makes my life a lot easier, even though, you know, clients have to spend some more time putting their packages together. When it makes its way to the building department, it's in a stage and a format where we can easily review and move that drawing quickly through. As building official, I'm excited to continue along the path that has already been established by the town of Ocean Ridge. I must also give praises to my very able building clerk who's not here right now. I want to point out that we've actually implemented a little program. We had a test pilot. We'd like to announce it tonight. Is that if you have an inspection, the contractor is doing some work for you, instead of calling in the morning, you can actually go on the city's website and we post the estimated time of arrival every day by 8 o'clock. So, you know, as well as calling if you wish, you can also now check the website to see the time for the inspection.
Fantastic.
And we got the DAS and the
You're a breath of fresh air. I think we are all delighted to have you. So, and we appreciate the new thinking that you bring with it and the experience that you have that backs up that thinking. So, you're here.
Breaking up again.
Okay. Is there any further comment on today's agenda?
I had a little something I wanted to bring up. I had a discussion with the chief over my concern about the mask wearing. It's a mandatory, I'm sorry, this again. Our mandatory mask from Palm Beach County ordinance has been extended. Living on Old Ocean, I'm pretty much appalled by the amount of people, I'd say 100 easy, who walk by there thinking that because they're exercising, that's the exemption. The road's 11, 12 feet across, you've got 5 people walking across, do the math. But nobody's got a mask on, nobody. So I asked the chief, without going down the enforcement line, the same thing, how we discuss this education and help people know that this stopping the spread is only useful to the whole world. Let's think outside the box. So we talked about the chief's idea was that in a couple weeks, because we both have town manager and chief going out of town, that we could possibly on a Saturday morning set up an information table, have some masks to give away, and give some info out to people that just because you're out walking doesn't mean that a mask isn't going to be of help. So I'm trying to find a way to get it out there so people will stop. You know, you see the comments. People, not me, everybody but me. No, it's important. I'm walking with my mask and I have people come within 3 inches of me without a mask because they can't. So therefore, anything we can do to impress upon the town, I think, and our residents, the importance. I mean, I'm almost at the point where really, but let's try, right? Let's try, and I thought that was a good idea from the chief. Let's go with the education via the enforcement. Let's try, see if we can get a little bit better compliance there, because on regular A1A here, which is less than 11 feet, that sidewalk, I sat here one morning looking out the window and the amount of people walking within 3 inches of each other, baby carriages, Ford, bicycles, walkers, and not a single mask to be seen. So I'm just looking for a way to help get that out there, and I thank the chief, and Tracy offered to do it, so we're gonna try and figure out a way to at least make an attempt to throw some education out there.
Is there and I know that we did that very early on, Chief, and it's hard to measure whether something is successful or not. I know that at least nobody threw eggs, but,
Yeah, close, but no.
yeah.
Sir.
So education is a key. Reaching people without incensing certain ones and getting negative responses is the goal. So if we can put something up in an area that is heavily traveled and offer people to walk up to us with our masks on, maybe something on the table is what I suggested. Maybe they want a bottle of water. I think the town may have some that we bought for the hurricane that we can hand out. So it won't cost us any more right this minute. And then we have masks that were supplied by Palm Beach County for us to issue, not the really fancy ones, but just the
Anything.
kind of throwaway
The paper.
T-shirt style materials
Okay.
that we have in stock. And if somebody wants to come up, that's fine. It's sort of like coffee with a cop. If I can lure you in with something free and then give you something you really didn't think you needed, we'll be successful. Hopefully, and Ms. Hurlbert and I discussed this, that COVID shaming will take place and that we'll see some improvement. There are going to be some folks who are not going to do it. We know that. And there's really no reason to argue with them at this point. They've made their mind up.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments? No. Commissioner
I have one?
Bessler, any final comments? We miss you. When are you coming back? I know. Oh, we gave you that get out of jail card for free, didn't we? All right, I would like to call the meeting adjourned at 8:21. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.